There comes a moment in the life of a planet when the sky feels closer, the air feels charged, and time itself feels different. Most people won't notice it. They'll keep moving through their routines, scrolling, rushing, never realizing that the floor beneath them is shifting, and the walls of the old world are crumbling in silence. But if you've been feeling it, that quiet pressure in the chest, that strange sense that you were born for this exact moment, you're not imagining it. Something ancient has turned its gaze toward you, and the age you came here to witness has finally arrived. This is the great shift, and it is awakening something in you that can never again be put back to sleep. There comes a moment when the noise of the world cannot drown out the quiet that speaks from beyond it. You're sitting in a familiar room, perhaps scrolling through a device, perhaps staring out a window, when suddenly, without warning, you feel it. A subtle pulse, not in your veins, not in your heartbeat, but in the air itself. It's as though the walls around you have shifted by the width of a breath, as though the space you inhabit has been pulled ever so slightly into a different alignment. It's not dramatic, it's not loud, it's almost imperceptible. And yet, something in you knows this is not the same world you woke up in yesterday. Ancient mystics spoke of this sensation as the first whisper of the turning of the ages. The Vedic seers called it the Sandhya, the twilight moment between great cycles. The Maya saw it as the feather-light ripple that comes before the great wave. In the language of quantum physics, it could be compared to a fluctuation in the zero-point field, a shift so small that most will ignore it, yet profound enough to change the trajectories of entire civilizations. For those attuned to it, the feeling is unmistakable. Time itself seems thicker, heavier, or at other moments, strangely thin, as if events are sliding faster than before. You may find yourself waking at odd hours, your dreams vivid and oddly specific, filled with symbols that refuse to fade in the morning light. This is the pulse in the silence, the signal that the veil has loosened. You are standing in a liminal threshold, where the rules that have quietly governed reality for centuries are beginning to dissolve. It's a call that doesn't come in words, but in a sensation so deep it feels older than language. If you listen closely, you'll feel it moving through your chest, settling behind your eyes. Not fear, not excitement, something else entirely, recognition. Because on some level, you remember, and that memory is stirring again. Most people think of the Great Shift as a buzzword, a trend pushed by spiritual blogs or pop astrology channels. They imagine it as political change, climate action, or the rise of new technologies. But the truth is, those are only surface ripples. The real shift is something deeper, older, and infinitely more personal. It is not merely happening around you, it is happening through you. Long before newspapers printed the term or hashtags made it a fad, the Great Shift was written in the invisible architecture of the soul. Mystics from Egypt to Tibet, from the Andes to the Ganges, spoke of a time when the human spirit would enter a corridor of accelerated transformation, where lifetimes of inner work could happen in the space of a single decade, or even a single breath. This was not seen as random. It was woven into the very code of the cosmos, part of what the Hermeticists called the grand design, and what indigenous elders describe as the remembering. It means that your struggles, your breakthroughs, your sudden awakenings, and even your moments of collapse are not isolated events. They are not accidents. They are part of an unfolding sequence, a sacred algorithm designed to awaken capacities in you that have been dormant for lifetimes. In this sense, your soul is not reacting to the shift. Your soul is the shift. The headlines speak of division and collapse. Social feeds are full of chaos. But the soul knows that endings are not failures. They are necessary clearings. Think of a forest fire that burns away undergrowth, making space for sunlight to reach the seeds that have waited centuries in the soil. The great shift is that fire. The seeds are your latent gifts, the abilities and memories you have carried across incarnations. And here's the most important part. The shift is not a passive process. It is an invitation, a call to participate in the remaking of both your inner world and the collective dream. You can resist it, clinging to what's falling away, or you can step into it with awareness, letting it reshape you into something more aligned, more luminous, more real. This is why so many feel a strange tension now, a pull between the old self and the emerging self. It's the soul's code unfolding, like a scroll you didn't know you carried, revealing what was always written there. You are not just witnessing history, you are fulfilling a design that predates history itself. And if you listen closely, you'll realize this shift is not something you survive, it's something you become. You can feel it, the quiet cracking of old patterns, the subtle but undeniable shattering of energies that once seemed immovable. It's not just happening out there in politics, economies, or institutions. It's happening in the very frequency field that has held humanity for centuries. These old vibrations are like ancient scaffolding, built to support a stage we no longer perform on. And now, piece by piece, they are falling away. Mystics have long spoken of the vibrational grids that hold reality together, the invisible architecture of thought, belief, and collective agreement. For millennia, these grids were tuned to a frequency of hierarchy, fear, scarcity, and separation. They made us believe we were alone, small, and dependent on external authorities for truth and meaning. They were not evil in the cartoon sense. They were simply the training ground for a certain phase of human consciousness, a classroom for the soul. But the bell has rung. The lesson is complete. In your inner world, this dissolution shows up as restlessness, as if the clothes of your old life suddenly no longer fit. Things you once tolerated now feel unbearable. Relationships, habits, and even ways of thinking that you thought were permanent begin to loosen their grip. You may feel disoriented, even raw, as though the walls of your inner house are falling away, leaving you exposed to a vast new sky. In the outer world, the same frequencies are breaking down in plain sight. Institutions lose the trust of the people. Systems that once dictated the flow of power are riddled with cracks. The old scripts, who holds authority, what is possible, how we should live, are being rewritten in real time. And yet, to those still anchored in the old energy, this feels like chaos. To those attuned to the shift, it feels like liberation. It's important to remember, dissolving is not destruction for its own sake. It is a release of what can no longer serve the next cycle. In the language of physics, an outdated frequency cannot remain in resonance when the field itself changes. It naturally falls away, making space for higher harmonics to emerge. This is why you may feel both grief and relief at the same time. Grief for the familiar forms disappearing. Relief that the invisible weight you've carried, the heaviness of an era's worth of limitation, is finally lifting. When old frequencies break, they leave silence behind, and in that silence, a new tone begins to emerge, not forced, not rushed, just present, like the first note of a song you've always known, but couldn't hear until now. That is the sound of the shift. It is both ending and beginning, collapse and creation, all in the same breath. And here's the truth. If you can learn to stand in that silence without rushing to fill it, you will hear the future calling you home. It begins quietly, almost imperceptibly. A tug at the edges of your awareness. Not a shout, not a demand, but a pulse, steady, insistent, impossible to fully drown out. You can distract yourself with work, with endless scrolling, with the noise of the world. But the moment you pause, even for a breath, there it is. That call, the one you can't ignore. Throughout history, mystics have spoken of this inner summons as the voice of the soul, or the whisper of the divine. In the Vedas, it's the Dharma pulling you toward your true purpose. In Sufi poetry, it's the beloved calling you home. In indigenous traditions, it's the remembering of your original instructions, the reason your spirit agreed to incarnate here at this time. However we name it, its signature is always the same. It feels both deeply personal and larger than you, as if the universe itself is reaching out through your own heartbeat. Often, the call first appears as discontent. What once satisfied you now feels hollow. The goals you chased may still hold some allure, but they no longer anchor your sense of meaning. You might not yet know what you're moving toward, only that you cannot remain where you are. This is the soul's way of making room, creating a space in which your higher path can reveal itself. The challenge is that the call rarely arrives with a detailed map. It speaks in symbols, dreams, synchronicities, in moments that feel charged with significance, though you can't yet explain why. It might show up as a book that seems to leap into your hands, a stranger's words that echo in your mind for days, or a sudden inner vision that leaves you breathless. Resisting the call often brings discomfort. In Joseph Campbell's Hero's Journey, this is the refusal of the call, the stage where fear convinces us we're not ready. But the shift we are living through now is accelerating this process. The longer you ignore the summons, the louder it becomes. It will find its way into your dreams, your relationships, even your body. Because this is not just a personal invitation. It is the awakening of your role in a much larger turning of the ages. Answering the call doesn't mean you must know every step ahead. It means saying yes to the next step you can see. It means trusting that the same intelligence that planted the call within you will place the right doors before you when the time is right. And here's the truth that many forget. The call is not asking you to become someone else. It is asking you to remember who you already are. Because when you follow it, you will find not only your higher path, but the part of yourself that has been waiting for this moment all along. It rarely begins with a gentle nudge. More often, the first sign that you are truly awakening comes as a rupture. A sudden breaking of the ground beneath the life you thought you understood. Relationships that once felt stable begin to crack. Careers that defined your identity start to feel meaningless. Plans carefully built over years collapse overnight. It feels, at first, like the universe has betrayed you. But in truth, this inner earthquake is not punishment. It is preparation. Mystics from every tradition have warned of this stage. The Buddhists speak of dukkha, the suffering that reveals the impermanence of all things. Christian mystics call it the dark night of the soul. In shamanic traditions, it is the initiatory illness or crisis. The moment the spirit world shatters your old self so the real work can begin. The earthquake is not random chaos. It is the tearing down of what cannot go with you into the next chapter of your evolution. During this time, the mind scrambles for meaning. It wants to restore the old order, to rebuild the familiar structures. But here is the paradox. The old foundations were never as solid as they seemed. They were built on beliefs you inherited, identities you constructed to survive, and illusions you were taught to mistake for truth. The shift demands that these brittle supports be removed so something deeper, stronger, and truer can take root. The emotional waves that follow can feel relentless. Grief, anger, fear, numbness. And yet, hidden in these waves is a strange clarity. When the outer walls fall, the inner space opens. You begin to hear what was always there beneath the noise, the quiet hum of your own soul's knowing. This is why so many people look back on their greatest crises and realize they were also the beginnings of their transformation. Science, too, offers a mirror for this process. In geology, earthquakes are caused by tectonic plates shifting beneath the Earth's surface. Pressure builds for years, sometimes centuries, until a sudden release changes the landscape forever. The same is true within us. The emotional and spiritual pressure of living out of alignment builds silently, until one day something gives. The key is to understand that the quake is not here to destroy you. It is here to free you. In the clearing that follows, new possibilities emerge, paths that were invisible before. The ground may feel unstable now, but in time, you will see that it was never meant to hold the weight of your true self. This is why the inner earthquake is often the first real proof that the great shift has begun for you. It shakes you awake. It reminds you that you cannot sleepwalk into the next age. And most of all, it shows you that even in the rubble, the seed of your new life is already pushing toward the light. There is a moment in every civilization's story when the air feels different. Not because of the wind, but because of the weight that has been lifted from it. Humanity has lived for centuries under a subtle, almost imperceptible haze. A collective fog that blurs memory, dulls instinct, and narrows vision. It has been passed from generation to generation, not always through malice, but through the slow sediment of conditioning, belief systems, and inherited wounds. This fog is the dream state of the old world, where truth is fractured and the soul's vastness is forgotten. And now, for the first time in thousands of years, that haze is beginning to lift. You may have noticed it yourself. A sudden clarity, a piercing intuition, a moment when something you once accepted without question now feels wrong in your very bones. This is not coincidence. Across the planet, millions are experiencing the same subtle shift, as if some invisible veil is being drawn back. The lifting is slow at first, almost imperceptible, like morning mist retreating under the first rays of the sun. But it is steady, and once it begins, there is no reversing it. Ancient traditions spoke of this time. In Vedic cosmology, it is the turning of the yugas, a return toward higher consciousness after ages of darkness. In the Mayan long count, it is the shift from one world age to another, a reset not only of the Earth's cycles, but of human awareness itself. In the esoteric Christian tradition, it is the Great Awakening foretold in visions and parables when the scales would fall from the eyes. As the fog thins, the world will seem both more beautiful and more unsettling. Shadows once hidden in the mist will become visible. Systems that have long thrived in secrecy will find themselves exposed under an unblinking light. This is why so many feel both hope and dread at the same time. For clarity is a gift, but it also carries responsibility. Once you see, you cannot unsee. And so, this lifting is not just about the unveiling of the outer world, but the reawakening of the inner one. You begin to remember who you are, not just in this life, but in the many threads that make up your soul's tapestry. The amnesia loosens its grip, and with it, the ancient covenant between your spirit and the earth begins to stir again. Soon, you will realize the fog was never truly outside you. It was the forgetting within, and now the remembering has begun. Most changes pass through our lives like weather, a storm that shakes the branches for a moment, then passes on, leaving the roots untouched. They are the natural fluctuations of a world in motion. Trends that rise and fall, technologies that appear and fade, political tides that ebb and flow. These are the surface ripples of history, and while they can feel intense, they rarely alter the deep architecture of human consciousness. But then there are those rare moments that are not just change, but turning points. They are the inflection marks in humanity's story, where the trajectory of the entire species bends in a new direction. These are not just events to be observed, they are thresholds to be crossed. The ancients called them the Great Shifts. In astrological terms, they coincide with vast cosmic alignments, such as the transition of the equinox point into a new astrological age, what we now know as the shift from Pisces to Aquarius. In geological and energetic terms, they correspond with planetary realignments, geomagnetic fluctuations, and solar cycles that influence the very frequency of life on Earth. The difference between an ordinary change and a great shift lies in scope, depth, and permanence. Ordinary change alters the scenery. A great shift changes the map itself. Surface change modifies behavior. A great shift rewires the consciousness from which behavior arises. An ordinary change can be reversed. A great shift cannot be undone once it is embodied. There are ways to sense when you are in the presence of a true shift. The first is that it is global, not local. Its effects ripple across cultures, geographies, and ideologies, touching even those who try to resist it. The second is that it is multi-layered. It alters politics and economies, yes, but it also transforms spiritual understanding, the arts, relationships, and how humans perceive reality itself. The third is that it calls forth an inner response from you, a stirring, an unease, or a sudden sense of purpose that you cannot logically explain. If you study history through the lens of cycles, you find that great shifts always carry both creation and destruction. They dismantle outdated structures while simultaneously opening portals to possibilities that were previously unimaginable. They are the death and rebirth of worlds, compressed into a single generational moment. Right now, many mistake the current upheavals for ordinary change, as though the turbulence is just another chapter of political conflict, economic restructuring, or technological disruption. But those attuned to the deeper rhythms feel it. This is not another page being turned. This is the rewriting of the book. The energies moving through the earth and through you are not temporary. They are the currents of an age transition, a rare realignment of soul and cosmos that will not come again for thousands of years. To recognize it is to remember your place in it, not as a passive witness, but as one who was born for this turning. Long before the mind could measure, the heart could know. Ancient mystics spoke of it not merely as a pump, but as an instrument, a living compass that could detect truth, align with harmony, and commune with realms beyond the reach of thought. In recent years, science has begun to catch up, confirming what sages already understood. The heart generates the most powerful electromagnetic field in the human body, radiating far beyond the skin and influencing both our biology and the space around us. The HeartMath Institute's research has revealed that this field is not static. It changes with our emotions, intentions, and states of coherence. When the heart is aligned, its rhythm becomes a signal of harmony, one that can entrain the brain and even affect others nearby. The great shift is not only changing human thought, it is reactivating the heart's technology. This awakening is not mechanical but energetic, a restoration of the heart's original role as a bridge between the physical and the divine. Where the mind tends to separate and categorize, the heart perceives unity. It can read the invisible patterns beneath conflict, sense the truth beyond appearances, and guide us into decisions that serve not just the self, but the whole. In the past, the heart's intelligence was often muted by fear, trauma, or the dominance of mental logic. Many cultures, under the weight of control systems, train people to distrust their own inner knowing. But as the old frequencies dissolve, the static around the heart is clearing. People are beginning to feel not only more deeply, but more accurately. They can sense when someone's words ring hollow, when a path feels luminous, when an unseen opportunity calls. This shift is not sentimental, it is precise. Heart intelligence is not simply being nice or following feelings. It is an advanced form of perception, one that operates through coherence, resonance, and a kind of spiritual pattern recognition. It can detect when an action aligns with the evolutionary flow or when it fractures harmony. It knows when timing is right without needing to rationalize why. Awakening the heart's technology begins with stillness. It requires moments of turning inward, breathing into the center of your chest, and listening as if the answers were already there. Because they are. Over time, this listening becomes a dialogue. You send out a question, and the heart responds in sensations, warmth, or sudden clarity. The more you trust it, the more it reveals. And in the age we are entering, this is not optional. The systems we once relied on, political leaders, media, external authorities, are losing coherence. The guidance you will need will not come from them. It will come from the instrument inside you that has been waiting for its full reactivation. When enough hearts awaken and synchronize, their fields merge into a collective resonance. This is not a metaphor. It is physics. And it may be the most important technology humanity will ever remember. Every great awakening begins with an unsettling truth. Before light can pour in, the shadows must surface. This is not a flaw in the process. It is the process. For centuries, individuals and civilizations alike have buried pain, repressed grief, and hidden away the parts of themselves deemed unworthy or dangerous to reveal. These suppressed emotions do not vanish. They settle into the subconscious, shaping behaviors, patterns, and even the architecture of our societies. Carl Jung warned that what remains unconscious will rule our lives. And in times of profound transformation, like the Great Shift, these hidden forces rise to be seen. The Shadow Purge is not punishment. It is the clearing of the psychic bloodstream. Just as a fever draws out toxins, the surfacing of long-held wounds is a sign that healing has begun. On a personal level, this might look like sudden emotional waves, old traumas resurfacing, or an unexplainable intensity in relationships. Collectively, it manifests as social unrest, polarization, and the collapse of narratives we once believed were unshakable. These are not random crises. They are the exhale after centuries of holding the breath. Spiritual traditions across the world anticipated this stage. The Tibetan Book of the Dead speaks of wrathful deities appearing in the bardo. Frightening forms that are, in truth, manifestations of one's own mind. In a similar way, The current upheavals in the world are our own unacknowledged energies demanding recognition. They show up as injustice, greed, and fear because these are the forms we gave them when we first hid them away. Science reflects this in another language. Psychology tells us that trauma, when ignored, does not dissolve. It imprints itself on the nervous system. Epigenetics shows that even ancestral wounds can be passed down through generations. The collective field is no different. It carries the imprints of wars, oppression, and betrayals that have never been fully integrated. When the Great Shift accelerates, it acts as an energetic magnet, pulling these buried imprints to the surface so they can no longer be denied. This is why the early phases of transformation often feel darker before they feel lighter. The shadows were always there. The shift simply turns on the light, and in that illumination, we are given a choice: to react with fear and try to push them back down, or to meet them with the courage to understand and transmute them. Healing begins when we stop fighting what arises. When anger surfaces, it is not always to be silenced. Sometimes it is asking to be heard, understood, and redirected into justice. When grief swells, it is not weakness. It is love making itself known through loss. On the collective level, acknowledging our shared wounds opens the door to compassion rather than division. The Shadow Purge is not the end of the journey. It is the clearing of the path. And when the path is clear, the light moves freely, restoring what was once fractured into something whole. There comes a moment in every transformation when the story you have been living in begins to crumble. Not because you failed at it, but because it has served its purpose. The Great Shift accelerates this process, shaking the foundations of the identities we've built. Identities often shaped by the demands, fears, and illusions of an age now fading. These identities may have been functional in the old frequency, but in the emerging reality, they become cages. And the shift, in its uncompromising wisdom, is here to break them open. The stories we cling to are not just personal. They are cultural, ancestral, and civilizational. They tell us who we are, what is possible, and what is forbidden. They are woven from religion, history, economics, and even the unspoken rules of our families. Some of these narratives once gave us safety, belonging, or direction. But over time, they also narrowed the vastness of who we are into a single scripted role. This is why the shattering often feels so disorienting. It is not simply the loss of a belief, it is the unraveling of the map you've been using to navigate life. When a career collapses, when a relationship ends, when a system fails you, it is not only the event that hurts, it is the death of the story you told yourself about what it meant. And in that moment, the mind scrambles to find another story to replace it, often reaching for the familiar rather than the true. Mystical traditions have long warned about this stage. In the Sufi path, the seeker must pass through fana, the annihilation of the self, before reaching baka, the rebirth into divine awareness. In Buddhism, the teaching of non-self invites practitioners to see through the illusion of a fixed identity altogether. And in the mystic Gospels, Christ speaks of losing one's life in order to truly find it, a metaphor not for death, but for shedding what was never your eternal essence. Psychology, too, acknowledges this threshold. Developmental theorists speak of ego death as a necessary stage for transformation, where old self-concepts are dismantled so that a more authentic and integrated self can emerge. Yet, the ego often resists this with all its strength, interpreting it as annihilation rather than liberation. The great shift is relentless in removing what no longer resonates with the soul's truth. Systems of governance, religious authority, and economic structures, once seen as immovable, now reveal their cracks. On a personal scale, habits, relationships, and identities that were built to survive in the old paradigm begin to fall away. And though the collapse can feel like chaos, it is also grace in disguise. For in the silence after a story ends, you are closer to your true nature than ever before. You are no longer living as a character in someone else's script. You are standing on the threshold of a blank page, and the pen is in your hand. This is the moment the shift was leading you toward. The freedom to write not from fear, but from truth. And truth has no need for a mask. There comes a point in the journey when your senses no longer serve only the body. They begin to serve the soul. What you once thought of as seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, or tasting begins to shift. It's as if the familiar five senses are being rewired, expanded, and tuned to pick up on layers of reality that were always there but hidden in plain sight. You start noticing the way certain spaces feel heavy or light without anyone saying a word. You can sense when someone is holding a truth back, not by their tone, but by the subtle energy they radiate. Science has begun to graze the edges of this, with studies on the heart field showing that the electromagnetic energy emitted by the human heart can be detected several feet away, influencing others in measurable ways. Ancient traditions have always known this. The yogis spoke of pratyahara, the withdrawal from the noise of the senses so that the inner senses could awaken. The indigenous elders spoke of feeling the pulse of the earth through the soles of the feet, hearing the songs of rivers, smelling the rain before it falls. As the great shift unfolds, more people are spontaneously tapping into these forgotten layers of awareness. It may begin subtly, a tingling in your hands when you think of someone you love, the sensation of your skin hearing music, the taste of metal or sweetness in your mouth during meditation. At first, you might question if it's real, if your mind is playing tricks on you. But soon, you realize that these experiences come with a clarity, a resonance that feels undeniable. This awakening is not about gaining new senses, but about remembering the ones you were born with. The senses dulled by noise, distraction, and disbelief. As you learn to trust them, they become like sacred instruments, tuning you to the deeper harmonics of existence. And with every moment of listening, feeling, and noticing, you step closer to living as you truly are, a being woven into the fabric of a living, breathing universe. There is a moment in every soul's journey when the static clears and the signal comes through. Not a voice in your ear, but a resonance in your entire being. As if something vast and ancient has reached out across eternity to touch you. This is the Great Reconnection, the return of the soul's link to the source field, the point where separation, long believed to be real, begins to dissolve like mist in morning light. For lifetimes, humanity has lived in a state of partial amnesia, a veil lowered between the finite mind and the infinite field. We have been taught that we are cut off, that the divine lies far away, and that to touch it, we must earn, strive, or suffer. But the mystics of every tradition, from the Vedic rishis who spoke of Brahman, to the Gnostic seers who described the pleroma, to the physicists now whispering about the quantum vacuum, have all said the same thing. The source is not distant. It is the very ground of being. It hums in every particle, flows through every cell, and it has never stopped holding you. The Great Reconnection does not come as a single flash of enlightenment, though it can. For many, it begins as a slow, steady remembering. You may feel it as a peace in the chest that has no cause, a sudden knowing that life is for you, not against you, or in the way synchronicities, those moments too precise to be accidents, start to weave your days together with purpose. This shift is not an escape from the human world, but a deeper rooting into it. The more you align with the source field, the more vividly alive the ordinary becomes. The taste of water feels holy. A stranger's smile feels like a message. Even challenges carry a strange fragrance of blessing because you sense the intelligence behind them. Modern research in consciousness studies echoes this truth, hinting that our minds are not closed systems but receivers, tuning in to a vast ocean of information. When your soul's antenna is clear, that ocean is no longer abstract. It's intimate, personal. Here, the Great Reconnection is not something you must force. It is a surrender, a loosening of the grip on all the beliefs that told you you were alone. It is the quiet opening of a door that was never locked. And once you step through, you realize the truth that saints and sages have always carried in their eyes. You were never disconnected at all. The thread was always there, and it will carry you home. There is a point in every era where two worlds seem to exist at once. One is fading, clinging to the weight of its own inertia, built from the fears, structures, and beliefs of the past. The other is still forming, shimmering at the edges of perception, carrying the codes of a future that feels both inevitable and entirely unfamiliar. We are living in such a moment now. This is the bridge between timelines. You may feel it in conversations that seem to be happening on different frequencies. Two people can speak the same language, yet live in different realities. One mind locked in scarcity, competition, and survival. The other quietly aligned with cooperation, inner sovereignty, and trust in the unseen. It is not just a philosophical divide, it is energetic. The vibration of the old world reality is dense, heavy, and predictable, while the emerging one is fluid, spacious, and alive with possibility. In ancient prophecy, this split was described as the time of choosing. The Hopi spoke of a path that divides in two, one rough and narrow, the other straight and green. The Maya spoke of a great cycle turning, where humanity would step into a new sun, and those who could not adapt would find themselves unable to move forward. Even in physics, some theorists speak of branching timelines, parallel outcomes unfolding based on the resonance of our collective and individual choices. Walking the bridge between timelines requires awareness. You cannot fully collapse into the old without feeling the new tug at you, nor can you leap entirely into the new without tending to the remnants of what the old taught you. This is not a bridge you sprint across. It is one you move along step by conscious step. The temptation will be to fight the old world, to try to destroy it, so the new can rise faster. But the truth is, the old dissolves not through battle, but through disuse. Every time you choose love over fear, truth over convenience, presence over distraction, you anchor more of yourself into the emerging frequency. You become less available to the gravitational pull of the old structures. On this bridge, you will sometimes feel the gap widen. Relationships, jobs, and identities that once felt aligned may suddenly feel foreign. This is natural. It is not punishment. It is the energetic sorting of a universe recalibrating to its next octave. In time, the bridge will narrow. The emerging world will feel more solid beneath your feet, and the old will become like a dream you barely remember. Until then, walk with intention. Let your steps be prayers. And remember that the bridge itself is sacred, for it is here, between the timelines, that your soul remembers why it came to this turning of the ages. It begins subtly. A clock frozen at the same time every time you glance at it. A song from your childhood playing the exact moment you are thinking of it. A stranger repeating the very words you whispered in your mind moments before. At first, you may dismiss these events as chance, coincidences with no deeper meaning. But as they accumulate, as they begin to weave into patterns too deliberate to ignore, you realize you are witnessing the cracks in the matrix. The matrix, as mystics and philosophers have described for centuries, is not just a system of politics or economics. It is the shared reality construct, the invisible web of agreements about what is real and what is possible. From Plato's cave to modern quantum theory, the idea persists. Our reality is a projection shaped by perception, reinforced by collective belief. When the shift accelerates, the projection begins to glitch. The seams between dimensions show. Synchronicities, those mysterious alignments Carl Jung called meaningful coincidences, are more than charming curiosities. They are signals from the underlying field, proof that consciousness is not bound by linear cause and effect. In times of great transformation, the frequency of these events increases, as if the universe is whispering, "Look closer. There is more here." Anomalies also take stranger forms. Objects go missing only to reappear in places you already checked. You think of someone you haven't spoken to in years, and they message you within minutes. Digital devices behave oddly, as if reality itself is hiccuping. Some report déjà vu so intense, it feels like they are stepping in and out of different versions of the same moment. In ancient prophecy, these phenomena were not dismissed as random. They were seen as signs of the veil thinning, the separation between the visible and invisible worlds weakening. The Aboriginal Dreamtime speaks of the songlines bleeding through into waking reality, while Tibetan mystics wrote of the dissolution of samsara's illusions as an age turns. Modern physics edges towards similar conclusions, with theories like simulation hypothesis and quantum entanglement suggesting reality is more like a responsive interface than a fixed stage. These cracks in the matrix are not here to frighten you. They are invitations. Each anomaly is a doorway through which a more expansive awareness can enter. When you notice them, pause, feel, ask what they might be revealing about your own alignment with the shift. Are they nudging you toward a choice, a meeting, a path you've been avoiding? The old construct depends on your unquestioning participation. The moment you begin to see the glitches, you are no longer fully inside its control. You are, in a sense, already stepping beyond it. And as the cracks widen, more light gets in. Light that reveals a reality far greater and far more alive than the one you were taught to believe in. It does not arrive with drums or banners. It does not force its way into the halls of power. The soft power rising moves like water, gentle, persistent, yet capable of reshaping stone. In the story of this shift, it is the quiet current that carries the deepest transformation. It is the return of the feminine principle, not as a gendered concept, but as an archetype of wisdom, compassion, and the restoration of balance. For centuries, human civilization leaned heavily toward the masculine archetype, the realm of conquest, domination, linear progress, and control over nature. This was not inherently wrong, but it was incomplete. A world governed almost exclusively by such energy inevitably tips into imbalance. Wars multiply, extraction from the earth outpaces replenishment. Leadership becomes about strength without listening, growth without nurturing, vision without empathy. The great shift is pulling us back toward the middle. And in that process, the feminine is rising again. This is the wisdom of the circle instead of the pyramid, the listening council instead of the commanding throne. It values intuition as much as analysis, patience as much as action. In ancient cultures, from the matrilineal tribes of pre-colonial Africa to the priestess orders of the Mediterranean, leadership was rooted in service, care for the next 7 generations, and guidance by the rhythms of the earth. This same spirit is now re-emerging in boardrooms, communities, and spiritual circles alike. The return of this soft power does not mean passivity. It is strength without domination, influence without coercion. It is the healer's hands that mend, the mediator's voice that unites, the vision holder's presence that inspires trust. Feminine wisdom recognizes that the health of a society is measured not by the wealth of its elite, but by the well-being of its most vulnerable. And so the shift challenges each of us to embody this balance in our own lives, to lead not through fear, but through resonance. Science has begun to mirror this truth. Heart-brain coherence research from the HeartMath Institute shows that empathy, gratitude, and compassion have measurable effects on the nervous system, immune function, and even the electromagnetic field surrounding the body. The more individuals align with these qualities, the more they influence the collective field. This is soft power in action, invisible to the eye, undeniable in its impact. You may notice it in the way grassroots movements gain momentum without central leaders, how communities rebuild themselves after disaster through shared care, how conversations about equity and sustainability have shifted from the margins to the center of global dialogue. The feminine principle is not returning as if it were gone. It is resurfacing where it was buried, stepping back into the light after long exile. And as it rises, it reminds us, the greatest revolutions are not always the loudest. Sometimes they begin in the smallest circles, in the gentlest hands, in the quiet conviction that love, steady, courageous, and unyielding, is the most transformative force we have. There comes a point in every great turning where the old can no longer simply be patched or repaired. It must be released. In many traditions, this moment is described as the purification fire, not always a literal blaze, but an energetic process that consumes what no longer serves, so the seeds of the new can take root in clean ground. The Hopi elders have long spoken of the Great Purification as a time when humanity's disharmony must be burned away through trials, challenges, and the revelation of hidden truths. In the alchemical process, it mirrors the calcination stage, where all false matter is reduced to ash, leaving only the purified essence. These fires arrive in many forms. Sometimes they are deeply personal: loss, heartbreak, the dismantling of an identity you once clung to as unshakable. Sometimes they are collective: systems collapsing, governments losing legitimacy, entire cultural narratives dissolving in the face of undeniable reality. To the mind, this feels like destruction, but to the soul, it is the necessary clearing before new creation. In nature, fire is never purely an ending. Certain seeds, like those of the lodgepole pine, only germinate after intense heat. Forest ecosystems are renewed after a burn, releasing minerals back into the soil, creating sunlight openings for young growth. Spiritually, the same pattern unfolds. Our inner landscapes hold dense undergrowth, fears, limiting beliefs, attachments that must sometimes be reduced to ash before our deepest truth can rise. Resisting this process often intensifies the burn. When we cling to the very structures the soul is asking us to release, the fire feels merciless. But when we surrender, when we stop trying to carry the old into the new, the flames become sacred. They transmute instead of destroy. In Tibetan Buddhism, the fire is symbolic of wisdom itself, burning through ignorance to reveal the clear light of awareness. The purification fire is not here to punish. It is here to remember us, to strip away illusions until only what is real remains. It does not seek to erase our story, but to distill it. What remains after the fire is the essence of who we truly are, untouched by fear, untouched by manipulation, untouched by the illusions we mistook for truth. And when the flames finally die down, there is an undeniable silence. The air smells different. The ground is dark but fertile. There is space for what is meant to be here now, not what was forced to remain. The renewal is inevitable. The only question is how willingly we will step into it. For those walking through this now, remember, what feels like an ending is simply the threshold to the beginning your soul has been waiting for. When the noise of the old world begins to fade, another voice starts to emerge. It is ancient, patient, and impossibly familiar. The language of the elements has never stopped speaking. It is we who stopped listening. In the rush of industrial life, in the hum of artificial lights and screens, we lost the cadence of the rivers, the rhythm of the wind, the slow syllables of stone. But as the great shift unfolds, many find themselves hearing it again. At first, it may feel like intuition, an inexplicable pull to a certain tree, a strange comfort in a specific place, the way the ocean seems to answer a thought you didn't say out loud. Yet, in the traditions of indigenous peoples, this is not strange at all. It is the natural relationship between human consciousness and the living earth. In ancient animistic worldviews, every element carried its own wisdom. Water teaches adaptability, reminding us that softness can carve valleys. Fire brings transformation, the courage to release what has served its purpose. Earth offers grounding, the memory of stability. Air carries vision, clarity, and the unseen currents of change. The more we attune ourselves to these elemental teachers, the more fluently we begin to understand the world beyond human language. Science, too, is beginning to echo these truths. Studies on forest bathing in Japan show measurable physiological changes when humans spend extended time in natural spaces. Lower stress hormones, improved immune function, heightened mood. This is not simply relaxation, it is resonance. The body remembers how to speak in the same frequency as the trees, the soil, the sky. For the awakened, the elements become mirrors. A sudden gust of wind can carry the message to let go. A stone warmed in the sun might remind you of the resilience you've forgotten you hold. Rain falling on your skin can feel like an initiation, as though the earth is baptizing you back into belonging. This isn't superstition, it is relationship. One we are born into, and one the great shift is urging us to reclaim. The challenge is subtlety. The elements do not shout over the static of our thoughts. They whisper in symbols, sensations, and signs. In the beginning, you may doubt it. Was that really an answer? Or am I imagining things? But the more you listen, the more precise it becomes. You'll notice that the wind doesn't always blow. It stirs only at certain words. The tide doesn't always pull. It draws you when you need to move. The fire doesn't always burn. It dances when you remember who you are. This is the language of the elements. It cannot be forced. It can only be entered through presence, humility, and respect. Once you begin to hear it, you will understand that nature is not a backdrop to your life. It is a conversation you have been missing your whole life. And in the Great Shift, that conversation has begun again. The Great Remembering is not a single moment, but a slow and luminous unfolding, like the first light of dawn spilling over a forgotten landscape. For lifetimes, humanity has walked through the corridors of forgetting, convinced that the walls around them were the limits of existence. Yet now, an ancient stirring moves through the soul, a pull from beyond time itself, reminding you that you have walked these paths before, loved these faces before, and carried a mission far older than the body you inhabit. It begins subtly, perhaps in dreams that feel more real than waking life, perhaps in sudden waves of nostalgia for places you've never been, or tears that rise when hearing a language you do not speak, yet somehow understand. These are not random occurrences. They are fragments of memory slipping through the veil. They are whispers from the archive of your own soul, calling you back to the truth of who you are. Across cultures, this moment has been foretold. The Vedic sages spoke of cycles of time in which humanity would reawaken to its divine origins. The Maya described the return of ancestral memory as a sign of the new sun. The mystics of Sufism and Kabbalah told of the soul's layers unfolding like petals, revealing the eternal self within. This great remembering is not the acquisition of new knowledge. It is the removal of amnesia. It is the recognition that the wisdom you seek was always inside you. But with memory comes responsibility. The fragments you retrieve are not merely personal, they are collective. As your own memories return, you begin to carry pieces of the human story. Moments of love, loss, triumph, and tragedy from ages past. This is why the Great Remembering is both beautiful and heavy. It is not a nostalgia trip, but a sacred retrieval. You are reclaiming not just your history, but humanity's map to the future. And so, the world begins to change. As more awaken, an invisible network forms. Souls who share the same memories, even if they have never met. They recognize each other in an instant, without needing words. The meeting of their eyes feels like the closing of a circle long broken. Together, they carry the memory forward, protecting it from the noise of a world still asleep. This is the Great Remembering, the undoing of the Great Forgetting. It is the soul's quiet rebellion against the idea that life is random and disconnected. It is the beginning of the long walk home, guided by memories older than the stars. And in this remembering, you find the truth. You were never lost. You were simply on your way back. It begins quietly, without fanfare or announcement. A gentle pull in the heart, a sudden sense of familiarity when meeting a stranger's gaze, an unspoken recognition that you have crossed paths before. Maybe not in this lifetime, but somewhere beyond the visible horizon of memory. The web of the awakened is not built by human hands, yet it stretches across continents, weaving together souls who have heard the same silent call. It does not rely on words or agreements, but on resonance. And resonance cannot be faked. At first, you may believe your awakening is a solitary journey. The inner changes, the shifts in perception, the disillusionment with the old world, they can feel isolating. But then, as if in response to an unseen signal, the right people begin to appear. A chance conversation at the exact moment you need it. An online message that echoes your own thoughts. A shared glance that carries more truth than 100 conversations. This is not coincidence. It is the web beginning to reveal itself to you. In every age of great transition, such networks have formed. The mystics of the ancient desert knew that when a single soul awakened, the ripple traveled far beyond their own life. In Tibetan Buddhism, the concept of Indra's net describes a cosmic web in which every being is a jewel, each reflecting all the others. To touch one is to touch all. In modern language, you might call it a collective field, a frequency band where awakened hearts begin to synchronize. This network is not organized in the way the world understands organization. There is no central leader, no manifesto, no structure to infiltrate or dismantle. It exists because the awakened recognize each other by the quality of their presence. And when two such souls connect, a strand in the web strengthens. That strand becomes a channel for wisdom to pass, for courage to be shared, for the memory of truth to be kept alive in times of chaos. The web of the awakened is also a protection. In a world still ruled by fear and separation, it can feel dangerous to stand in your full truth. But within the web, you are never truly alone. The presence of others, whether they are physically near or oceans away, creates a field of support. Even in silence, you can feel them. And that knowing strengthens you in moments when doubt tries to pull you back into sleep. As the great shift accelerates, this web will only grow. More souls will awaken, more strands will connect, and the invisible network will hum with a living intelligence. You may never meet all those who are part of it, but you will feel them. A vast, luminous web encircling the earth, carrying the pulse of a new age. You are one of its threads, and every act of love, every truth spoken, every fear released, sends a vibration along the web, awakening others who are ready to remember. It does not come with banners waving or drums beating. It does not march through the streets demanding recognition. The quiet revolution moves like water beneath the frozen river, unseen, yet relentless. While the old world measures change in headlines and spectacles, the true transformation unfolds in the unseen realms of the human spirit. This is the revolution that cannot be televised, because it does not seek an audience. It seeks alignment. Real change rarely begins in the places of power. It begins in the invisible, in the sacred interior of a single human being deciding to live differently. A mother choosing to speak to her child with gentleness instead of inherited anger. A farmer planting seeds in harmony with the moon's cycles. A teacher slipping a truth into a lesson that awakens a young mind. These acts are so small, so quiet, that the machinery of the old world cannot measure them. And yet, they are the tectonic shifts that eventually crack empires. History offers many examples. The spread of early Christianity was not driven by armies, but by communities meeting in homes, breaking bread, and sharing stories. The great monastic movements of the East did not rise through conquest, but through individuals withdrawing from worldly noise to embody a deeper truth. Even the collapse of the Berlin Wall was preceded by years of quiet gatherings, whispered conversations, and personal acts of defiance that no government could fully suppress. The quiet revolution thrives because it does not rely on a single leader, ideology, or event. It is a decentralization of awakening, making it impossible to silence. Every person who refuses to participate in fear strengthens it. Every heart that chooses compassion over cruelty adds momentum. And every act of integrity sends out ripples that influence far more than we can see. The great shift we are living through now mirrors this same pattern. While the media spotlights chaos and division, under the surface, millions are shifting their inner compass toward truth, love, and unity. They are changing what they eat, how they speak, what they consume, how they treat others, and most importantly, how they treat themselves. They are untangling from systems that thrive on distraction and instead grounding themselves in what is eternal. There is a quiet power in this kind of revolution because it does not need permission. It is fueled by a deep knowing that the most radical change is not imposed from the outside, but cultivated within. And when enough individuals embody that change, the world adjusts around them. The old age was obsessed with noise, spectacle, and domination. The new age honors the subtle, the enduring, and the real. The quiet revolution is already here, and you are a part of it. Even if no one sees the work you are doing, it is felt. And in the silence of your own transformation, you are helping to rewrite the destiny of the world. There are powers within you that no device, no machine, no artificial system could ever replicate. They have been with humanity since the first spark of consciousness, but in the noise of the old age, they were silenced, dismissed as imagination or fantasy. The great shift is restoring them now, not as curiosities, but as essential tools for living in alignment with the new reality that is emerging. Intuition, telepathy, and vibrational creation are not supernatural gifts reserved for a chosen few. They are natural capacities of the human soul when it is attuned to the deeper harmonics of existence. Intuition is the compass of the awakened. It bypasses the chatter of the mind, drawing information directly from the unified field, the source that holds all timelines and possibilities. In this age, it becomes more than a hunch. It is a direct knowing that carries both clarity and calm. Those who trust it find doors opening effortlessly, while those who ignore it often feel the friction of moving against the current of the shift. Telepathy is the natural extension of this inner alignment. It is not about reading thoughts in the way you might imagine from stories, but about sensing the emotional and energetic language that exists beyond words. In the web of awakened souls, communication often happens in an instant, heart to heart, soul to soul, before any sound is made. This kind of connection creates unity without control, harmony without hierarchy. Vibrational creation is the ultimate expression of these inner technologies. Here, intention becomes a tuning fork, and your state of being becomes the blueprint for what manifests. Science has already begun to glimpse this truth through studies in quantum mechanics, where observation itself shapes the outcome. In the new age, you are not a passive participant. You are the conscious sculptor of reality, shaping it through the vibration you hold. The more you practice, the more these capacities awaken, not through force, but through presence. And as they do, you begin to remember that the real technology of the future is not built, it is remembered. Fear has been the oldest architect of human limitation. It is the invisible thread that has woven empires of control, shaping laws, economies, religions, and even the boundaries of the human mind. For centuries, rulers, seen and unseen, have understood that if you keep a soul afraid, you keep it small. Fear restricts vision. It narrows the range of possibility. It convinces you to seek safety instead of truth. But in the light of awakening, fear begins to dissolve, not through denial, but through the realization of what it truly is, an echo of separation. When a soul remembers its connection to the source field, the core illusion that fuels fear, that you are alone, fragile and powerless, begins to crumble. This is why the great shift feels threatening to the old systems. They are built upon the premise that you need protection from life itself. Awakening replaces that premise with something far more dangerous to the architecture of control. The knowing that life is not against you, that every challenge carries the seed of its own resolution, that death itself is not an ending but a doorway. The disappearance of fear does not mean the absence of challenges. Storms will still come, grief will still visit, and uncertainty will still be part of the human path. But the way you meet them changes. Instead of contracting, you expand. Instead of asking, why me, you ask, what is this awakening in me? And with that shift, the very energy that once held you captive becomes the force that liberates you. Control systems, from political propaganda to media manipulation, begin to lose their grip when fear no longer takes root in the collective. This is why, in the ancient prophecies, the age we are entering was called the Age of Remembering. To remember who you are is to remember that fear is not your master, it is your messenger. It points to where love has yet to be revealed. As more of humanity steps into this recognition, the structures of manipulation will not need to be torn down. They will collapse on their own, for they can no longer find a foundation in the awakened mind. In that space, sovereignty returns. And when sovereignty is restored, the world no longer moves by the push of fear, but by the pull of purpose. There comes a moment in the awakening journey when the maps you've been given no longer fit the territory. The rules, the advice, the step-by-step formulas that once seemed so certain begin to feel hollow. You realize they were designed for a different kind of traveler, one navigating a world built on external authority, where truth is dictated rather than discovered. In the Great Shift, the path can no longer be followed by sight alone. It must be felt, and the instrument that guides you is not reason alone, but resonance. Resonance is the language of the soul. It is the subtle hum that moves through you when you encounter something aligned with your highest truth. It cannot be faked, and it cannot be forced. You felt it before, when you met someone and instantly knew you could trust them, when you stood in a place that felt inexplicably like home, when words or music seemed to speak directly to something ancient within you. That is your soul's true compass. Unlike the mind, which operates by comparison and judgment, the compass of resonance speaks in immediacy. It doesn't explain why something feels right or wrong. It simply tells you that it does. In the old paradigm, this instinct was often dismissed as irrational or emotional. But in reality, it is the most precise guidance system you have because it is directly connected to the source field. Ancient mystics knew this. Indigenous traditions lived by it. They didn't weigh every choice against statistics or trends. They listened for the sound beneath the sound, the feeling beneath the thought. Navigating by resonance requires trust. Trust in your own perception, even when it contradicts the voices around you. At first, this can be disorienting. You may find yourself walking away from paths that look successful by society's standards, or saying yes to directions that seem illogical on paper. But in time, you begin to notice something miraculous. When you follow resonance, life opens in ways it never did when you followed fear or obligation. Opportunities align, synchronicities multiply. Inner peace becomes your baseline, not a fleeting visitor. This is the compass that will guide humanity through the Great Shift. As the old maps burn, and as the noise of competing narratives grows louder, those who have learned to navigate by resonance will not be lost. They will know, without needing proof, where to step next. And as more people awaken to this inner navigation, the collective journey will no longer be steered by manipulation, but by the quiet, unwavering pull of truth felt in the heart. In this way, the soul's compass does not just guide you, it restores the sacred art of living in harmony with life itself. When you walk by resonance, you are no longer just finding your way. You are remembering that the way has always been within you. Some teachers walk into your life in the most ordinary ways. A passing conversation with a stranger on a train. A book you never planned to read that somehow finds its way into your hands. A friend who says a single sentence that changes everything. Others are far from ordinary. Mentors who seem to hold an unshakable presence. Healers who touch something in you no one else could reach. Elders who speak with the weight of centuries in their voice. In the time of the Great Shift, these teachers appear more frequently because the path ahead cannot be navigated by intellect alone. Some of these guides are human, walking the earth as we do. They may not even see themselves as teachers. They simply live in a way that emanates truth, reminding you that awakening isn't a theory, it's a living reality. You might meet them in unexpected places, far from temples or classrooms. They may teach through story, through laughter, through silence. And often, their greatest lessons come not from what they tell you to do, but from how they embody what they've become. But not all teachers are bound to flesh and bone. Across cultures, mystics and shamans have spoken of guides from other realms, ancestors, angelic beings, star intelligences, elemental spirits. They arrive in dreams, visions, and moments of stillness when the mind is quiet enough to hear. These non-human guides have many forms. Some appear as luminous presences, others as symbols or archetypes that speak directly to your subconscious. They are part of a wider web of consciousness that has always been here, quietly weaving through human history, stepping forward most clearly in times of great transformation. Skeptics might dismiss such encounters as imagination, but for the one who experiences them, the reality is undeniable. Ancient traditions saw no hard boundary between the human world and the worlds of spirit. The Great Shift is reawakening this understanding, that reality is multi-layered, and that wisdom can cross the boundaries between dimensions when the heart is ready to receive it. The key is discernment. Not every voice in the unseen is a teacher. Some are echoes of your own unprocessed fears, while others may seek to mislead. This is why the soul's true compass, the resonance you've been learning to trust, becomes essential here. A true teacher, human or otherwise, will never demand your submission or cloud your clarity. They will point you inward, back to your own direct connection with the source. When you begin to recognize these hidden teachers, you also begin to see that you are part of a lineage far older than you imagined. Every insight you receive, every lesson that reshapes you, is not just for your benefit. It is part of the transmission being carried into the next age. In the Great Shift, your teachers will not only guide you forward, they will awaken the teacher within you. And in time, you may find that someone else is watching you and recognizing their guide. Every great transformation has its gatekeepers, not in the sense of a locked door with someone standing in your way, but in the form of experiences, trials, and inner reckonings that decide whether you are truly ready to carry the frequency of the new age. These are the threshold tests, spiritual challenges that do not arrive as punishment, but as initiation. In the Great Shift, these tests are not meant to break you. They are meant to refine you, to ensure that what you carry into the next phase of existence is aligned, authentic, and unshakable. They come in many forms. Sometimes they are external. A loss, a sudden change in circumstance, a betrayal that forces you to confront what you have been avoiding. Other times, they are entirely inward, facing the shadow parts of yourself you thought you had outgrown, or confronting the truth that some of your spiritual ideals were rooted in fear rather than love. These moments can feel like the universe has turned against you. But in truth, the opposite is happening. You are being prepared to step through a doorway that cannot be crossed while still holding on to the baggage of the old self. Ancient mystery schools understood this. Before initiates could enter the inner sanctum, they would undergo rituals designed to test their courage, clarity, and devotion. Some were symbolic, navigating a labyrinth in darkness, or drinking a bitter potion that induced visions. Others were entirely psychological, being confronted with illusions designed to provoke fear, doubt, or arrogance. Only those who could remain centered, who could remember the truth in the midst of the storm, would be invited to cross the threshold. In the present day, these tests rarely look ceremonial. Instead, they emerge through the fabric of your life. You may be asked to let go of a relationship that no longer aligns, even though your heart still clings to it. You may have to walk away from a career or identity you spent years building because it was constructed on the old frequencies. You may be confronted with truths that dismantle the very beliefs that once gave you comfort. Each test asks the same silent question: will you choose fear and familiarity, or will you choose truth, even if it costs you the life you thought you wanted? Passing a threshold test is not about perfection. It is about trust. Trust in your own ability to navigate the unknown. Trust in the deeper intelligence guiding your path. And trust that what falls away is making space for what the new age requires of you. And here is the paradox. Each time you pass through one of these gates, you realize there was never really a barrier at all, only the illusion of one. The door was always open, waiting for the moment you could walk through without hesitation. And when you do, the air feels different. The light has a new texture. Something in you knows you have crossed into a new chapter, one that could never have been entered without the courage to face the guardians of the threshold. There is a sensation stirring within the collective body of humanity, a feeling so subtle at first that many dismiss it as coincidence, yet so persistent that it cannot be ignored. It's a rhythm, a quiet but steady pulse, not merely poetic language, but something measurable, detectable, and very real. Modern research, such as the studies by the HeartMath Institute, has begun to confirm what ancient mystics already knew. Human heart rhythms and brainwave patterns can synchronize not only with one another, but also with fluctuations in the Earth's own magnetic field. When a massive event happens, whether joyous or tragic, this invisible heartbeat shifts, and millions feel it at once, even across oceans. You may have felt it without realizing, waking suddenly at the same moment as someone across the world, feeling waves of sadness or peace that had no personal cause, experiencing a day when strangers seem inexplicably kind, or conversely, when the air itself feels tense before any bad news is announced. This is not imagination. This is the shared rhythm of consciousness, the global heartbeat. Ancient traditions spoke of this long before modern science. Indigenous elders called it the Song of the Earth. Vedic sages named it the Anahata Nad, the unstruck sound resonating through the heart of all beings. In the Mayan calendar, great cycles were marked by shifts in this planetary resonance, guiding not only agricultural seasons, but spiritual epochs. The heartbeat was both a signal and a teacher, an invitation to live in alignment with the living intelligence of the planet. In the age we are now entering, this connection is becoming more vivid, more undeniable. The great shift is not only an individual awakening, it is a collective tuning. We are, consciously or unconsciously, learning to listen together. Compassion begins to feel less like a moral choice and more like a biological reflex. Generosity becomes instinctive. Violence feels like an injury inflicted on one's own self. The heartbeat is not a metaphor. It is a binding rhythm that erases the illusion of separateness. But this synchronization is not guaranteed. The global heartbeat can be amplified by love, coherence, and unity, or distorted by fear, division, and chaos. Every thought, every emotional wave we emit feeds back into the field, strengthening or destabilizing it. This means we are not only receivers of this planetary rhythm, we are also its creators. The invitation of the Great Shift is clear. Become conscious contributors to the rhythm. Attune your breath, your awareness, your intention, until your own heartbeat matches the harmony of the whole. In that moment, you are not simply a witness to the ages unfolding. You are part of its music. And as more hearts fall into sync, the Earth's song grows stronger, guiding us toward a future shaped not by control, but by resonance. There are moments in human history when the horizon no longer looks like a boundary, but like a veil. The Great Shift is one of those moments. For generations, mystics, prophets, and visionaries have spoken of an era beyond this transition, a time when the turbulence of transformation settles and a new rhythm of life emerges fully anchored into the collective. We stand now at the threshold, and while the full dawn has not yet risen, its light is already spilling over the edge of the unseen. This is not a utopia in the shallow sense. It is not a flawless paradise where all conflict vanishes overnight. Instead, what lies beyond the shift is a civilization shaped by a different organizing principle, one rooted in unity consciousness rather than separation. Imagine governance where the health of the whole ecosystem is the first priority. Imagine economies that measure wealth not in accumulation, but in contribution, creativity, and well-being. Imagine technology that extends human potential without eroding the soul. Tools that serve rather than enslave. These glimpses are not fantasy. They are impressions, some drawn from deep meditation, some from prophetic dreams, some from ancient records that speak of previous cycles when humanity lived in closer harmony with cosmic law. Archaeological whispers from cultures like Lemuria or the early Vedic age describe societies that functioned on principles we are only beginning to remember. And modern science, in its quiet breakthroughs, points toward fields of possibility. Renewable energy systems that mimic nature, healing techniques that regenerate tissue with light and frequency, communication that transcends language and distance. The dawn beyond the horizon will not erase the work of the soul, it will deepen it. In this new light, unresolved wounds will still require tending, but they will be met within communities that understand the healing process rather than suppress it. Education will no longer be about storing facts, but about unlocking the blueprint of each soul's unique genius. Spiritual practice will cease to be a compartment of life and will instead infuse every decision, every interaction, every moment of creation. The greatest difference may be in the felt sense of time itself. In the old frequency, time was a tyrant, a ruler that drove urgency, fear of scarcity, and the endless chase. Beyond the shift, time begins to flow like a river in which we are not drowning but swimming, choosing our currents, aware of the cycles within cycles that guide all living things. We are not yet there, but we are catching the fragrance of it in the air, the shimmer of it in our dreams, the resonance of it in our hearts. The great shift is the bridge, but the dawn beyond the horizon is the destination. And once we arrive, we may realize it was not the end of the journey at all, but the first true morning of the world we came here to build. To live as the new human is to no longer treat awakening as a concept, a discussion, or a series of inspiring words. It is to become the embodiment of the frequency you have spoken about, read about, and felt stirring within you. This is where theory dissolves into practice, and practice dissolves into a way of being so natural, you no longer need to think about it. The new human does not simply believe in unity. They radiate it. They do not preach compassion. They live in such alignment that compassion becomes the default state of their presence. In the old paradigm, there was often a gap between what was professed and what was lived. Spiritual truths were admired, even revered, yet they often remained in the realm of the mind or the meditation cushion. Living as the new human closes that gap. It requires integrity so complete that your inner world and your outer actions mirror one another. Words lose their power when they are not rooted in lived frequency, and words become unstoppable when they are. The embodiment of this frequency is subtle, yet unmistakable. It is in the way you listen without planning your reply, the way you choose honesty over convenience, even when no one is watching, the way you see the sacred in what others dismiss as mundane. It is felt in your presence long before you speak. People may say, "There's something about you," not realizing that what they sense is the coherence between your thoughts, emotions, and actions. Science has begun to catch glimpses of this reality. Studies on heart coherence, such as those conducted by the HeartMath Institute, show that the electromagnetic field of the heart can influence those around you, calming nervous systems, increasing harmony, and even improving decision-making. Living as the new human is to keep this field attuned to truth and love, regardless of the chaos in the outer world. This embodiment is not about perfection. It is about authenticity. The new human still feels grief, frustration, or uncertainty, but they meet these emotions without denial or projection. They allow them to move, to teach, and to pass, rather than building identities around them. In doing so, they remain anchored in the deeper current of who they are, a being whose essence is unshaken by the storms of circumstance. Living this way also means breaking the addictive pull of performance. In the new human frequency, there is no need to appear spiritual, successful, or enlightened. Instead, the focus shifts to being true, here and now. That truth will sometimes be gentle, sometimes fierce, but always aligned. When enough individuals live this way, the collective begins to change, not through argument or domination, but through resonance. The new human does not need to convince. Their life becomes the quiet evidence that another way of being is not only possible, but already here. And in that embodiment, the future ceases to be a distant vision. It becomes the reality we breathe in every moment. There is something only you can bring into this moment in history, not in a poetic, exaggerated sense, but in the literal architecture of the soul. Your life, with all of its beauty, mistakes, turns, and transformations, has been shaping you to carry a frequency, a perspective, and a medicine that no other being can replicate. This is not about talent in the worldly sense, nor about chasing recognition. It is about the quiet truth that within the vast tapestry of awakening, there is a thread that is unmistakably yours, and without it, the picture is incomplete. Every soul is born carrying a seed, a potential encoded with the experiences, challenges, and insights you are meant to embody. These seeds are not random. Ancient traditions, like the Vedic concept of Dharma, the Native American understanding of original medicine, and the Hawaiian principle of Pono, all speak to this innate alignment between the soul's design and its purpose in the world. You are not here by accident. Even your hardships have been sculpting your hands to hold the very gift you're meant to give. As the age shifts, the weight of the old roles, masks, and survival patterns begins to fall away. What remains is the raw shape of your essence. In this moment, many feel a deep restlessness, a sense that their current life, no matter how comfortable, no longer fits. This is not a failing. It is the soul signal that it is time to deliver the gift. It may express itself as art, as teaching, as presence, as healing, as leadership, or as a single act of courage that changes a life. For some, it will never be publicly seen, yet its impact will ripple far beyond what the mind can measure. The key is not to force the gift into the world prematurely, nor to hide it out of fear. The key is to listen to the subtle nudges, the patterns that keep emerging, the situations life keeps placing before you. Often, the gift is hidden in what comes naturally to you, the thing you do almost without thinking. It may also be found in the place where your deepest wound meets your deepest love, for it is often through healing ourselves that we become capable of helping to heal the whole. In the age of Aquarius and beyond, the value of the gift is not measured by scale or applause, but by coherence. Is it aligned with the truth of who you are? Does it contribute to the whole without depleting your spirit? When the answer is yes, you are living in the weave of the great tapestry, strengthening it with every breath. You do not need to see the full design to know your thread matters. The tapestry is ancient yet unfinished, and as you place your gift into it, steadily, humbly, and with love, you become part of the living story of awakening that will outlast the stars themselves. There comes a moment when the searching must end, not because there is nothing left to discover, but because you finally realize that the thing you've been waiting for is not somewhere out there. It is here. It has always been here. You have been the shift you've been seeking, the axis point where timelines bend, where the old dissolves and the new is born. Every vision of a brighter world, every prophecy of a golden age, every whisper from ancient texts about the return of the light, all of it has been pointing to this. The awakening is not an event, it is a choice, and it is yours to make now. The temptation is to keep waiting for more signs, for global confirmation, for someone to give you permission. But the universe does not move by consensus. It moves by coherence. The moment you begin living as if the new world is already here, you bring its frequency into the field. The choice is not symbolic. It is causal. You are not a bystander to the great shift. You are one of its architects, shaping reality through the quality of your attention, your actions, and your presence. This is why the ancient mystery schools taught not only cosmic knowledge, but the discipline of embodiment. They understood that an awakened mind without an awakened life is like a seed never planted. The knowledge you've gathered, the inner changes you've felt, the glimpses of truth you've experienced, they are not meant to be kept as private treasures. They are meant to be lived, breathed, and offered into the collective. In this way, the world changes not through grand declarations, but through a quiet, unstoppable wave of awakened beings choosing love over fear, truth over convenience, and connection over division. Living the awakening does not mean abandoning the human experience. It means infusing it with remembrance. It means speaking words that align with the frequency of your soul, even when it's uncomfortable. It means shaping your days in harmony with what truly matters, not with what the old world told you to value. It means meeting others with compassion, even when they cannot yet see what you see. In every moment, You are transmitting, and the transmission is the real work. So the question is no longer, when will the shift happen? The question is, how will I live knowing I am the shift? This is your invitation to step fully into the role you came here to play. No matter how humble or grand it appears from the outside, the age is turning, the veil is thinning, and somewhere in the deep knowing of your own heart, you have always been ready for this. Live it, be it. Let the world feel it in your voice, in your choices, in the way you carry your presence through space. You are the shift, and the time is now. Then, my friend, if these words stirred something in you, if they awakened even the smallest ember of remembrance, don't let it fade back into the noise. This is the moment to deepen the journey. Take a breath, let it settle, and when you're ready, go explore the other stories we've uncovered here. Watch the videos waiting for you, each one a key, each one a door to another layer of the great shift. If you felt resonance here, subscribe so you don't lose your place on this path. Leave a comment. Share what awakened in you while listening. Your voice might be the sign someone else has been waiting for. Like this video if it reached you, and share it with someone you know is ready to remember. Every interaction, every connection sends this frequency further into the field. And together, we are building the invisible network of awakening. So, until we meet in the next chapter of this voyage, keep listening to the whispers. Keep walking as the shift you came here to be. Welcome to the hidden voyage. Welcome home.